Be drafting some more Hearthstone arena stuff today. So we've got Priest, Hunter, and Druid that we can play. I'm going to go with Hunter because I think it's fun. I really enjoy playing like an aggressive deck with this in arena. So some of the cards we're going to look out for are like, I want to pick up one Freezing Trap and however many King's Elekks we can get. These cards all kind of suck. I don't like Deathlord very much, especially in arena, because opponents are going to have big cards. So it's like, this is gonna die to, it's maybe gonna like take a couple turns to kill, but it's gonna die, and they'll get like a 5 or a 7 drop or something, and it's just bad. Misdirection kind of sucks. You just never really know what this is gonna do, so we'll take Violet Teacher. It's just the most reasonable card there. Bloodfin Raptor is a beast, which is relevant for some of the Hunter cards, and it's a good early drop. Multi-Shot's nice. This is a card that I don't really want to have more than one of in the deck, because like they have to have two things, so that's just something to consider with this card. And Explosive Trap is okay, but it's like they could play around it, and this is the first thing that most people are going to test for. So since it's early on and we'll probably have another chance to pick up a multi-shot, I'm actually going to take the Bloodfed Raptor here. But if we were late in the draft, I would take multi-shot because it would be nice to have one copy. We don't really want either of these 1-drops. They're both pretty bad, so we'll take this 2/7. Here's a King's Alex, so that's going to be our pick, just because this is like, as a 3/2 that draws a card, this is just fine. And these guys are both pretty bad. Starving Buzzard is it's a cool ability, but as a 3/2, like, it's awesome to draw cards whenever you summon a beast, but as a 3/2 for 5, it's just like, it's too small, and they're going to kill it immediately because they don't want you to draw things. So you're going to have to play more beasts in the same turn with this to like ever draw cards off of it. So if we compare these two things, we've got a 5-mana 3/2 that maybe draws a card if we spend more than 5 mana, or we've got a 2-mana 3/2 that might draw a card and it might not. So this is the guy we're looking at. We don't want this. It's 0 mana, but the 1/1 body is too small to impact the board. Tracking is it's kind of like a ponder sort of effect from Magic. You just get to choose the best one of your top 3 cards, and it's not bad, but since you're just going to draw a card every turn, so we just want to have all our cards be something that we want to play. It does have synergy with Violet Teacher, but I don't think that's enough to make it like a playable, because it's just, we're spending 1 mana and not doing a whole lot for it. So we'll take Amani Berserker here, just because it's a solid 2-drop. It'll let us start beating down. Here we've got Mech Warper, another 2/3, just like kind of a generic early creature. We've already got a few of those, so we might start considering higher cost cards. We've got Gnomish Inventor, who in Hunter we might consider taking this just because it draws a card, so it keeps the cards flowing, and Hunter doesn't always have a lot of card advantage in the late game. It's also slightly higher cost, so if we reveal it with King's Elec, we'll have a chance to draw it. And we've got Flying Machine, who's not really worth considering here. I'm going to go with the Gnomish Inventor. Here we've got Silverhand Knight, who's sweet because it's a 6 power for 5 mana, so it's a pretty good rate, and you get 2 bodies, so if they kill the big one, you still have a 2/2. Kill Command is a solid card. It's a burn spell, and Dread Corsair is probably not something we want because we don't have any weapons yet, and it doesn't really match up to these two. We've got 2 beasts so far for the Kill Command, and I'm trying to, I want to take the Silverhand Knight. I'm trying to think of a good reason to take Kill Command over it, but I don't think it's going to be as like reliably good as this 5-drop is, so we'll go with that. Here again, we don't want this. Just doesn't do anything. Stone Skin Gargoyle is like very low power. Like 1 power for 3 mana is not very good, so you want its ability to have a solid effect. And this just doesn't do that much because it's like, it goes back to 4 health or to full health at the beginning of your turn, but they're just going to kill it. And there's like, they have very little repercussion for hitting it because it's only 1 power, so it doesn't do a whole lot. So we'll take this guy because he's big and he beats down. And the other cards are bad. Kraken is probably our pick here. It's like, it's very expensive, but that's okay because we like might joust it or whatever off of this King's Elec. We don't want another Gnomish Inventor because this is really just a filler card. And Deadly Shot is actually pretty nice because if you if you make trades so that their like last card is good, you can use the deadly shot to just get rid of their, because if they only have one minion, then you destroy that. So this is a nice piece of removal, although it requires a little maneuvering, but it's easy enough to do that. But we just want the big creature. Like, this guy's just amazing in arena, so we'll take him. We don't really like any of these whole lot. Doomsayer is not something we want to be doing here. Lock and Load is a cool card, but you really need to build around this. And in arena, since you want to have like mostly creatures. In fact, these are all creatures so far. We don't have any spells. Like, it's just you're probably never gonna get card advantage with this because it takes so much work to do it. So we're gonna take Mr. Garrison, who's gonna be just fine. It's another early creature, and the power thing we might at some point, like late game. This is actually pretty good in Hunter because you can double power, and you could do a lot of damage real fast to close out a game with him. So he might end up being like a really good finisher in our deck. I don't think we want the Dart Trap, although players are more likely to use hero powers in arena, but it does the 5 damage to like a random enemy. So if they have, if against a paladin, this is pretty bad because they can, or a shaman, they might power and we hit the thing they get from the power, and that's bad. Fossilized Devilsaur is pretty big, I guess, and we do have a few beasts. We are in like the class that's most likely to have a beast, but I think it's just kind of slow and it's not very exciting. So we'll take Spellbreaker because he's a good like middle ground card, and having a silence effect in your deck is a nice thing to have available. So here we've got we're not going to take the Explosive Trap again just because they'll try to play around it no matter what trap we have out. So this is interesting because so we have a 4/5, or we've got like this guy who's 1 less power and toughness. So the trade-off we get there is that if we have another mech already, we get to discover a mech, so we get to choose one of 3 and put it in our hand. And so this guy, like, if we had some mechs already for our deck, the Gorilla Bot might be the pick here just because it gives us like the potential to it cantrips it, or it draws us a card. So if we had the mechs, that would maybe be worth considering because we're taking a smaller creature, but we're getting like the chance to like build up card advantage. But since we have no mechs, we're just gonna go with the Yeti, who's always fine. Here, Explosive Sheep is not a card we're gonna want because it can just like kill off a lot of our other creatures, and we want to be beating down in this deck. Mad Bomber is an okay 2-drop, and so is Huge Toad. This guy has the advantage of being a beast, and he doesn't hit our creature. So Mad Bomber does more damage, but sometimes he might like kill our other guys or hit us, which doesn't matter as much. So we'll go with the beast. Here we definitely want Unleash the Hounds. This card is a really nice finisher for these kinds of decks, hunter decks in general, and this can be really big. Stone Splinter Trog is fine, but we've got a lot of 2-drops already, so it's good that we have these because it means we don't have to prioritize them late in the draft. We've already got a like pretty good chance of having either a 2/3 or a 3/2 on our second turn, and that's a nice thing to have. And this gives us a 3-drop, although we are most of the time not going to play it for 3 mana, or we won't play it on turn 3. Is what I should say. Wind Fury Harpy is not a card we want because this is 2 more mana than the Yeti, and one of the things you have to consider is if your creature just gets like, if they just attack it and kill it, how good was it? So Yeti and Harpy are like just as good if they just kill it, but the Harpy costs 2 more mana. And so we're probably never going to attack with this because it like Wind Fury and high-ish power means that it is a high priority target, which is why this is not a kind of card you usually want to draft. So our choices are Wolf Rider, which is basically a removal spell. It's 3 damage for 3 mana, and it's a fine card. Like, I think that I probably don't play these as much as I should, but it's a solid, man. We've also got Draconid Crusher, who is just like really big, like 9/9 for 6 mana is pretty huge. And since we're a hunter, we've got the hunter power to, and like we've already got some kind of aggressive cards here, so we've got a good chance of putting our opponent under 15 pretty quickly. And once if we can drop this thing like early or at all, I mean, really, if you drop this and get the Battle Cry, it's just going to be really big for the cost, and it's going to be difficult. Even if your opponent does deal with this, they're going to have to spend so many resources doing it a lot of the time that your other things, like your other cards, like your huge toad or whatever, will overwhelm them. So we're going to take that. Also, the fact that it's a dragon matters sometimes, although it doesn't look like it's going to here. We've got Light Warden and Target Dummy, which we can't play here. Light Warden is actually an okay card if you're like a priest, but we don't have a way to trigger this, so it's not really worth considering. Armored Warhorse is fine, and the other two are unplayable, so not much of a choice there. A third Explosive Trap. I'd really like to have a Freezing Trap, and we've seen 3 of these, but this isn't really the one that I want to run in Arena. Anubiseth Sentinel is not very exciting. The Death Rattle requires you to have another creature out already, so if they just kill this last, the Death Rattle does nothing, and you're paying 1 mana more than a Yeti for a creature with 1 less toughness. Force Tank is alright. We've got we've got a good amount of high end. If we take the Force Tank here, we probably could back off on taking expensive cards for this draft, but I think it'll be alright to have. One more big finisher is fine. You want your curve too. Have a few things in each spot. So we need to look out for mostly 3-drops, and if we see good 1-drops, we'll take those. But we want to mostly look out for good 3-drops for the rest of this draft, and maybe some removal spells. Here's a fine 3-drop, Silverhand Regent. We can just play it on turn 3, and they'll probably kill it. It's not at its best, because it'd be better if we just had a vanilla 3/4. But we can play it on turn 5 and start getting value by getting the Silverhand recruits in addition to our power. Shield Bearer is pretty unplayable because it's a 0 power creature, so it never hurts anything. So it's it just slows them down a little bit, and it's not worth the card. And Puddle Stomper would be fine, but we've already got a lot of that going on, so we'll take this card that can give us more of a mid game advantage. So here we've got Tundra Rhino, who's good with our beasts, and we've got a couple of 2-drops. Even though the Bloodfin Raptor is a beast, I would take the Swampoos here over it, because we the Battle Cry could be relevant. If our opponent is a Paladin, particularly, we want to try to save this until they have a true Silver Champion out. And of course, these cards can just be, even if something like this, even if you normally would save it for the Battle Cry, you can't just play it on turn 2 and not worry about it if you need to make a drop. So this guy gives our beasts charge. I'm trying to see what we've got here. We've got 1, 2, 3. Those already have charge. That guy can, so it's 3.5. So we don't have a lot of beasts here. The ones we do have are pretty small cards. But I think we want the Tundra Rhino just because it's a more unique effect than these, and we've got a bit of early game already. Although it's not super exciting. Here we're going to take a Ball of Spiders. This is a slow draw 3. You get 3/1/1 Web Spinners, which give you a random. They're 1/1s, and they are beasts, which relevant with the Rhino. If we get turn 5 this and turn 6 this, then we get to send the 3/1/1s in. So it's kind of 3 damage spread out however we want, and then we draw 3 cards. When they die, you get a beast in hand. So that's also good with our Tundra Rhino, because the cards we draw from this will also have charge if this guy's around. Ancient Shade is pretty big for the cost, and you, at some point in the game, you might take 7 damage randomly. So this is a little worse than if we had a way to draw extra cards, although we really don't in this deck. So that's not something we'd need to worry about any more than normal. And 7/4 for 4 is pretty huge, but it also it just trades off with something like a Yeti. So it does hit hard, but it trades with similarly sized creatures. And Cold Light Seer is not a card we'd consider here, so we'll take the Ball of Spiders. None of these are super exciting. Tauren Warrior is not very good. Dancing Swords is big for the cost, but giving an opponent a card is a pretty huge drawback. So it's interesting that the 4/4 for 3 that's an ogre that attacks a random enemy thing is pretty good, because its drawback isn't so painful, because it's you just wanted to attack something anyway. But Dancing Swords, drawing them a card, is a pretty big deal. So this is generally not going to be worth it, because it's just you don't want to give them an extra card. So we'll take the Dark Scale Healer. This is a fine card. Sometimes it'll heal a few of our creatures. Like if it heals one of our creatures, that's fine. And it's like it's not too small for the cost. Oh man! So here is a multi-shot, which is a card that we were looking for from earlier. So we passed the one for the Bloodfen Raptor. Now I actually do wish we'd taken that because we've seen so many 2-mana creatures. But we did pass one of these earlier, hoping to get it later. We might still pass this because Piloted Shredder is just amazing. Like this guy is one of the best 4-mana cards you can have in Hearthstone because you get a 4-power creature for 4 mana, and then it dies, and you get a 2-power creature. So this is good against like removal because it leaves you with some kind of board presence even after it dies. A lot of the time, people will silence this just so you don't get the creature afterwards. So we'll take him. He's really good. We don't want the Sentinel. We don't want the Blade Tusk Boar because these guys are both kind of poopy. So we'll take Direwolf Alpha, who's fine. This is not... You don't want to play this turn 2, but it's good on, like, turn 4 or something because once you have a couple other things that you play this, they hit a little bit harder. Here, we don't want Priestess of Elune. It just restores health to you, which is not very exciting. So we've got a choice between 2 traps. Dart Trap, like... Our opponent will use the power. We already talked about that a little bit, but it's random, so it might just be really bad for us. And Bear Trap is pretty solid. You have to get attacked for this to happen, but you get a 3/3 taunt for 2 mana, which is really a very good rate. The problem with this is like if you're being very aggressive in the game, you might never be able to trigger this because they have to attack. They actually have to attack you. But we'll go ahead and take it here because it was the best of these options. So we've got Clockwork Gnome, who's an unexciting 1-drop, probably not something we really want here. Arcane Shot is a removal, and it's cheap, so you can usually, like, you're going to just tack this on in a turn when you have 1 extra mana and you need to kill something. Or we've got Desert Camel, who 2/4 for 3 is reasonable, but not exciting because it doesn't, like, hit very hard. And it puts a 1-cost minion into play from each deck, which we currently don't have any of, and we haven't seen any good ones, so it's alright that we don't. So if we had like a Zombie Chow or something, this would be pretty easily the pick because it would give us if we hadn't drawn the Chow already, it would give us like 4 power for 3 mana, which is fine. It does have the drawback that it gives our opponent 1 also, so I don't think we want to be taking this when we're only going to give our opponent a creature, because having a 2/4 for 3, but then they get a 1-drop is pretty bad. And it also, if we're playing this and giving our opponent a creature, it's making their draws better later in the game because it gets the 1-drop out of their deck. So it's going to be too much drawback for us, so we'll take the removal. Here we could probably take the Deadly Shot. That's good because it'll give us a removal spell, which we're actually kind of lacking so far. These guys are both, they're not really doing anything special. They're not doing anything our deck doesn't already do. And we've got another Deadly Shot here. It's good that we took this last one because we don't really want a bunch of these in the deck. So 1, I think, is enough. And this gives us the second King's Elek, which is a personal favorite card of mine in this kind of strategy. The guy in the middle, the 5-drop, is an okay card, but it's pretty slow, and I don't really care for that so much anymore, just because it's it takes so long to get going, to get it going, and if you're playing it for 5 mana, they're gonna kill it when it's a 4/4, so you have to save it for 7 mana, and then it's just a 6/6 for 7. So we just want this early guy. We just really like the King's Elek there. Here we probably don't want Youthful Brewmaster, although it sort of has synergy with King's Elek because it lets you use the Battle Cry a second time, but then you're not really playing this for the Battle Cry. That's just like a bonus. You're playing it because it's a 3/2 for 2, and it beats down. So if we're bouncing it back to our hand, then we're losing the main benefit of this kind of card. And this is also good for resetting a creature that has damage on it, but none of our guys are really that much toughness. So one of the better things to reset would maybe be I don't know, probably the Rhino or Force Tank would be really good to bounce. North Sea Kraken's probably a little too expensive to ever think we're gonna bounce it. So this isn't really something we need to do. And we can take a 3-drop here. So this guy's fast, and it does put out 2 damage immediately. So it's kind of a nice removal spell, which we're lacking a little bit. Or Flesh-Eating Ghoul, which is good if a lot of stuff is dying. So Flesh-Eating Ghoul is a card that we will want to put out on like turn 3 and then make a trade. So this thing grows to a 4/3 and maybe bigger. So this is good for if we get established in the first couple turns, we can put this guy out and he like helps us build up the snowball effect to like have a lot of good board presence to be able to win the game. So he is good if we are ahead early. And this guy is good if we need something to like catch up. So if our opponent is ahead early, then we'll want this thing because we can put it out and use the 2 damage to help control the board. And while this is really powerful, I actually do like the Flesh-Eating Ghoul in this type of deck because we are going to trade off a lot of these creatures. I'm not too worried about being behind, but I think it's better to take the safe pick, the one that can get us out of a bad situation instead of the one that can help us build up like a good situation for ourselves. So we'll take the panic button guy. Here's another King's Elekk who I think I'm going to take just because I love the card so much. Abusive Sergeant is also fine. It's not really a card you want to play on 1 mana most of the time, but you can. Like, I'll play this on 1 mana against like a Shaman or against like a Paladin or something that you just want to get a board presence early against another Hunter. This is a fine turn 1 because it just trades off with something like an Elekk. But the potential to draw cards with this is just so alluring to me. So we're just going to take this and we're going to hope that we have the coin a lot of the time. So we can coin out one of these guys since we're probably not going to have a 1-drop. And we get a Mythic, but none of these are very good. We don't want Gazlowe because we've only got one mana spell. We don't want Acid Maw because a 7 mana 4/2 is terrible. So I guess we're taking Ice Howl, who has charge and can't attack heroes. So this is basically a card that you take to like keep board control. Like you want something like this because it you play it and I guess it's gonna kill whatever their biggest thing is because it's a 10/10. And hopefully your other guys can like then hit the face after that. So this should be like kind of like 2 removal spells, I think. Because this should kill 2 things if the game is going that long while it's out. So this deck is alright. I do like 3 King's Elekk. This is a personal favorite of mine. I really like having Freezing Trap in this because it gives you it just like gives you something. It's like a 2 mana removal spell for. It's kind of like a 2 mana Deadly Shot because like if they only have 1 creature, it's gonna have to attack something. It goes back to their hand and it's too expensive for them to play again. And if you're putting a lot of pressure on, then you're going to like end the game before they get a good chance to play their more expensive card. But we don't have that, but we do have a lot of good aggressive creatures, which is definitely a goal that hunters have because you want to get some of these out and then start using the power quite a bit. So having a low end of the curve that has a lot of cards in it is going to be good for you because it lets you power more frequently. And having some of this big stuff too is good because it gives us some things that our elekks can hit in the joust and probably win. So it's like if we're jousting and hitting like one of these 4-drops and drawing it, then that is pretty good. Violet Teacher might be the worst card in the deck because we don't have that many spells. We got 1, 2, 3. We got like 5 spells, I think. Did I miss something? Oh, we have a Deadly Shot up there also. So we got 4, 5. Yeah, I think we've only got 5 spells in here. So Violet Teacher's not doing a whole lot for us, but it was 3, 5 is okay. That might be one of the worst cards in the deck. Tundra Rhino is probably alright because we do have a lot of beasts. And like, the King's Elekks are already pretty good value, so when they get charged, it's just all the sweeter. So yeah, we'll get some games in here, and this should be a pretty fun one. I like these aggressive decks.